History is often written by the movements of massive armies, the clash of steel, and the decisions of generals in distant rooms. But sometimes, history is bent by the sheer, stubborn will of a single man. In the spring of 1945, as the Nazi grip on Europe was finally shattering, the Canadian army was approaching the Dutch city of Zwolle. The plan was simple but brutal, an intense artillery bombardment followed by a full infantry assault. To the generals, Zwolle was just a strategic point on a map. To the thousands of civilians trapped inside, it was a death sentence. But one man, a French-Canadian scout named Leo Major, decided he wouldn't let that happen. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a force of nature who had already looked death in the eye and refused to blink. To understand what Leo Major was about to do, you first have to understand who he was. Leo wasn't your typical hero. He was a rebel, a man who had lost his left eye during the D-Day invasion when a phosphorus grenade exploded in his face. Most men would have taken their honorable discharge and gone home. Not Leo. He insisted that he only needed one eye to sight a rifle, and he claimed he now looked like a pirate, which he found fitting. He was a master of stealth, a ghost in the shadows who preferred to work alone, deep behind enemy lines. By the time he reached the outskirts of Zwolle, he had already earned a reputation for being indestructible. On the night of April 13th, Leo and his best friend, Willie Arsino, volunteered for a reconnaissance mission. Their orders were to scout the German positions and report back so the artillery could begin the shelling. But as they crawled through the dark, damp fields toward the city, disaster struck. A German patrol spotted them. A burst of machine gun fire cut through the silence, and Willie, Leo's closest friend, was killed instantly. In that moment, something inside Leo Major snapped. The mission was no longer just about reconnaissance. It was about vengeance, and it was about saving a city to honor the man he had just lost. Leo didn't retreat. He didn't call for backup. Instead, he took Willie's submachine gun, checked his own ammo, and disappeared into the darkness toward the city gates. He decided right then that he wouldn't just scout Zwolle, he would liberate it. Alone, he was one man against an entire German garrison of hundreds of soldiers, Gestapo officers, and SS units. Most people would call it suicide. For Leo Major, it was just the beginning of a very long night. Before we witness the moment Leo enters the Lioness Den and begins his psychological war against the Nazi garrison, I have to ask you, if you believe that the stories of individual courage like Leo's are what truly define our history, please hit the like button and subscribe. We are dedicated to bringing these forgotten legends back to life, and your support makes that possible. Now, let's go back to the outskirts of Zwolle, where a ghost is about to go to war. Leo entered the city around midnight. The streets were deathly quiet, patrolled by German squads who thought they were safe behind their defenses. Leo's strategy was brilliant and terrifyingly simple. He would create so much chaos that the Germans would believe a massive Canadian commando force was already inside the walls. He began by sprinting down the cobblestone streets, firing his Sten gun in short, violent bursts, throwing grenades into German outposts, and then vanishing before the smoke cleared. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. He would capture a German soldier, scream orders in French and English as if he were talking to a whole platoon, and then let the prisoner go to spread the rumor that the Canadians were everywhere. The psychological pressure began to work. In the dimly lit headquarters of the German command, panic was starting to set in. Reports were coming in from all over the city. The Canadians are in the north. They've taken the square. Our patrols are being snatched from the alleys. Leo was moving like a shadow, moving from house to house, using his one good eye to navigate the labyrinth of the city. He wasn't just fighting. He was performing a masterclass in guerrilla warfare. But he knew that as the sun began to rise, his ruse would be harder to maintain. He needed to find the heart of the German defense and rip it out before they realized they were being hunted by a single man. As the fires from his grenades began to light up the Dutch sky, Leo found himself standing before a German officer in a local bar. He didn't hide. He walked right in, sat down, and told the officer that the city was surrounded by the Canadian First Army. He told him he had 10 minutes to evacuate his men or the artillery would level every building to the ground. It was the ultimate bluff, a gamble with thousands of lives on the line. The officer looked into Leo's one remaining eye and saw a man who looked like he had already died once. The tension in that room was thick enough to cut with a bayonet, and the fate of Zwolle hung on what happened in the next few seconds. The German officer in that bar looked at Leo Major, man covered in the blood of his fallen friend, eyes burning with a cold, singular fury, and he made a choice. He didn't see a scout. He saw the vanguard of an unstoppable invasion. He believed Leo's bluff, but the officer was only one man. The city was still crawling with hundreds of SS troops and Gestapo agents who had no intention of leaving without a fight. Leo knew his window of opportunity was closing. He had to keep the illusion alive. He had to be louder, faster, and more violent than an entire battalion. Leaving the bar, Leo began what can only be described as a frantic marathon of shadows. He would sprint 2 blocks, fire a full magazine into a German barracks, throw a grenade into a parked military vehicle, and then disappear over a garden wall. Seconds later, he would reappear on the other side of the district, doing the exact same thing. To the Germans, it sounded like a coordinated assault from multiple directions. They began to fire blindly into the dark, often hitting their own men in the confusion. Leo was playing the entire German garrison like a finely tuned instrument of chaos. But then, the situation turned deadly. Leo stumbled upon a group of 8 German soldiers. They were alert, weapons raised, searching for the commandos they heard in the distance. Any other soldier would have retreated or called for support. Leo did neither. He charged. Before the Germans could even register the lone figure emerging from the fog, Leo had gunned down half of them and forced the others to drop their weapons. He didn't kill them all, he needed them. He marched them back to the city limits, handed them over to the bewildered Canadian troops waiting in the fields, and then, without saying a word, he turned around and ran back into the city to do it again. This wasn't just bravery, it was a psychological massacre. Over the next few hours, Leo Major repeated this cycle over and over. He captured groups of 10, 15, even 20 soldiers at a time. He would find them huddled in basements or street corners, terrify them with his presence, and march them out as prisoners. By the middle of the night, Leo had personally captured nearly 100 German soldiers. The German command structure in Zwolle was collapsing. They couldn't understand how their patrols were disappearing. They couldn't understand why they couldn't find the Canadian army that seemed to be everywhere. Before we witness the final heart-pounding moments where Leo discovers the Gestapo headquarters and makes his final stand to save the city from destruction, I want to remind you to take action. If this story of a one-eyed ghost defying an empire is gripping you, please hit that like button and share this video. These stories are only told if people like you help them reach the world, and if you aren't subscribed yet, you're missing out on the greatest legends of human history. Now, back to the burning streets of Zwolle. Leo's luck was bound to run out. Near the center of the city, he located the local Gestapo headquarters. This was the dark heart of the occupation, filled with the most fanatical Nazi officers who knew that if they were captured, they would face a hangman's noose. Leo didn't hesitate. He burst through the doors like a demon. The fighting inside the building was brutal and claustrophobic. It was a whirlwind of close quarters, gunfire, and shattered glass. Leo set the building on fire, turning the symbol of Nazi oppression into a funeral pyre. As the flames licked the night sky, the German high command finally gave the order. Zwolle was lost. The retreat began. But Leo wasn't finished. He found the local resistance, the brave Dutch citizens who had been hiding in the shadows. He told them the news they had waited years to hear. The Germans are leaving. The city is yours. But there was still a massive problem. The Canadian artillery was still scheduled to level the city at dawn. Thousands of shells were prepared to rain down on the very houses Leo had just fought to save. Leo had to get back to the Canadian lines. He had to stop the clocks. He was exhausted, bleeding, and his one good eye was straining against the smoke. But he began to run through the outskirts of the city, a lone figure trying to race against the sunrise. As he reached the Canadian outposts, he was nearly shot by his own sentries. He was screaming in French, waving his arms, looking like a madman. He reached the commanding officer just as the orders were being finalized to open fire. He collapsed in front of them and delivered the report that would go down in military legends: Zwolle is empty. I have liberated it. The officers didn't believe him. It was impossible. No one man could do that. But as the sun finally rose over the horizon, they looked through their binoculars and saw something that silenced every skeptic. The Dutch flag was flying over the city square. The ghost had won. When the Canadian troops finally marched into Zwolle on the morning of April 14, 1945, they didn't find a battlefield. They found a celebration. The streets were filled with thousands of Dutch civilians, weeping with joy, waving orange flags that had been hidden under floorboards for years. The city was intact. Not a single Allied shell had fallen on its historic churches or homes. The soldiers looked at each other in disbelief. They were expecting a bloodbath. Instead, they found a city saved by a ghost. Leo Major was found exhausted, sleeping in a local house, still clutching his weapon. He had done the impossible. He had won a battle before the army even arrived. Leo Major was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the second highest award for bravery in the British Commonwealth. But Leo, in his typical rebellious fashion, had originally refused a previous medal because he thought the general presenting it was incompetent. This time, however, he accepted. He didn't do it for the glory. He did it for Willie Arsino, the friend he had lost in the darkness outside the city walls. For the people of Zwolle, Leo wasn't just a soldier. He was a guardian angel with one eye. To this day, he is a national hero in the Netherlands, a man whose name is whispered with reverence every time they celebrate their freedom. But the story of Leo Major does end in 1945. Most men would have retired to a quiet life after such a feat, but Leo was a warrior of a different breed. 5 years later, when the Korean War broke out, Leo volunteered again. By now, he was older, but his spirit was even sharper. In November 1951, he was tasked with a mission that mirrored the nightmare of Zwolle. He was told to lead a small team of scouts to retake a strategic position called Hill 355, which had been captured by nearly 40,000 Chinese soldiers. But on that frozen hill in Korea, Leo Major led a squad of just 18 men. They moved like shadows, just as he had done in the streets of Zwolle. They infiltrated the Chinese positions and opened fire from the center, creating so much noise and confusion that the enemy thought they were being attacked by a massive force. For 3 days, Leo and his 18 men held that hill against thousands of elite troops. They were pelted with mortars, surrounded by infantry, and cut off from their own lines. But Leo refused to move. He stood in the middle of the fire, directing his men, refusing to let the enemy take an inch of ground. He won his second DCM that week. He was the only man to ever achieve such a feat in 2 separate conflicts. Leo Major lived a long life after the wars, passing away in 2008 at the age of 87. He remained humble until the end, often saying that he only did what any soldier should have done. But we know better. Leo Major proved that one person, armed with nothing but a rifle and an unbreakable will, can change the fate of thousands. He proved that the small units, the scouts in the dark, and the ghosts in the machine are the ones who truly hold the world together when it starts to tear apart. When we look back at the map of Europe and the hills of Korea, we see the lines of armies and the arrows of strategy. But if you look closer, in the quiet corners of history, you see the footprints of a one-eyed man from Montreal who walked into the fire and never looked back. His story isn't just a war story, it's a testament to the power of the individual. As long as we tell his story, Leo Major, the Ghost of Zwolle, will never truly be gone. Thank you for watching this 3-part journey into the life of a true legend. The war is over, but the memory remains. I'm your host, and this was the legend of the One-Eyed Scout. Until next time, keep history alive.